This is a great city to raise children in.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Almost no one gets shot here.
Today's guest is Daniel Stern, a stand-up comedian and one of the hosts of the podcast Radio Spätkauf in Berlin.
Berlin was a place that felt like was going to give you the permission to be whoever you want if you wanted to go do that. You didn't have to, you know? It's just like in some cities there's successful artists and like in Berlin they don't have to be.
Hallo liebe Freunde and welcome back to another episode of Guten, the podcast where we have interesting conversations with people living in Berlin who have an inspiring story that I believe it will inspire you as well. So whether if you are new in Germany or you have been living for many years, or even if you're German, I think this podcast will be very interesting for you. Today's guest is Daniel Stern. Daniel Stern is an American living in Berlin for more than 12 years. He is a stand-up comedian and he has created a very nice community also around the podcast scene. And also he's a co-host in one of the oldest English podcasts in Berlin, Radio Spätkauf. And yeah, before I forget, if you want to keep listening to this kind of stories, please subscribe to this channel. You have no idea how much it helps this project to grow and also to reach more guests. And now I will leave you with this conversation with Daniel Stern. Welcome, Daniel Stern.
Thank you.
It is very funny that when someone Googles your name, something else comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my SEO is tough with this name.
Yeah.
It's funny because when I meet people, there's a range of who they think Daniel Stern is.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there's the one you're referring to, which is like the actor from Home Alone.
Yes.
And many other great films.
But I didn't know that he was called Daniel Stern.
Yeah,
I
no.
actually Googled it first to know a little bit more about you. And then that actor came up and I said, oh, I didn't know that was his name as well. Yeah.
Yeah. The taller, for those listening, the taller of the Wet Bandits, or like the guy who got caught cheating in City Slickers, or I'm not sure what other references might land for. Like, has he done anything
Recently?
that like young people would know? Like, I'm sure.
I have no idea.
Yeah,
But I think by Home Alone, it's
By Home Alone.
that's the reference.
Lost in New York.
I also Googled it and I was like, what? Okay,
was
nice,
also a
interesting.
producer.
How he did it?
When I told you, okay, this is the name of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
next guest, and you were like, oh, we're having him?
Yeah.
Wow,
Has it
I didn't know
happened?
that he was in Berlin.
Has it happened that maybe someone was expecting the actor and then you just show up?
It's happened, I think, twice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was one time I was doing a show at the Comedy Cafe in Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great little venue. It's been around here. I don't know. It's one of those things where my timelines are bad. I'm like, it's been around for 3 years. It's probably been around for 8. And then two people came in and they were like mad. Like they felt that like they'd been lied to. They were like, you're not Daniel Stern. I was like, first of all, my photo's like in the thing.
And they were
Second
expecting
of
the
all,
actor.
it's a free show on a Sunday night on Weserstrasse, and you were like, oh, it's definitely Hollywood pseudo legend, semi legend. Stern.
I want to know, well, you have been living in Berlin already quite many years.
Yeah.
What brought you to Berlin?
So my wife got a offer here to do her postdoctoral research. She's a scientist.
Okay.
And so that was it. And I was like, sure.
Why not?
Like I was like,
Really?
not sold on it, right? Because I think a lot of people, they've like visited a few times, or like you know, their vacations get longer or whatever. I was just like, I know it's in Germany. I didn't have like a romantic notion of it. I wasn't one of these people who was like, man, I'm gonna be Bowie or like a techno guy,
DJ.
Like, I was just like, sure. Why not?
Where were you living before?
Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Portland. So you know maybe our previous guest probably Drew Portnoy.
Yeah, I've known Drew for a long time.
Yeah. Okay.
Mainly through doing comedy, but then he moved to Portland for a while.
Yeah.
After I was like, he's like, is this a good neighborhood? We had a few little chats about it, but it's like Portland is such like a nice, especially I don't know about now, but it was such like a nice, livable, easygoing, safe place. But it's just sort of like, yeah, it's fine, just go wherever, you know.
Okay. And then you moved to the wild Berlin, from Portland.
Yeah. I mean, my first flat here was near Potsdamer Platz, so it was like not wild. It was
Yeah.
so weird. Like, you know, you're walking through just either a memorial or a mall or whatever, and it's no one kind of there was no sense of residential. I was like I felt very lost. But that was only a few months, and now I've lived in the same neighborhood for a long time, and it's, I mean, I can't really imagine living anywhere else at this point.
Yeah, okay.
I probably will. You know, like it's just everyone, it seems like, eventually graduates out of Berlin.
Yeah. So a lot of people move out.
Yeah.
Do you have plans? Do you think that at some point you will come back to Oregon or something?
My priorities, you know, shifted, and this is a great city to raise children in.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, you're the first person that I hear to say that.
Oh, I mean, well, I'm just comparing it to anywhere in America.
Okay. Okay, yeah. And schools even more.
Yeah.
Yeah, or unless you're living in Neukölln. Or do you live in Neukölln?
I'm close to Neukölln, but no, I'm in Kreuzberg. But where I live in a lot of this city, there's outside places to play.
Yeah.
There's child care, there's prenatal care, there's postnatal care,
that is true.
You know, there's just things like that. Like, you know, you almost no one gets shot here.
They can go to the school without.
Yeah, it's like, it is. And it's one of those things, like, I don't know where you guys grew up, like how much violence or chaos there was.
Well,
we measure in how many heads are in the street.
Okay. Where we come from is actually the state that has, I mean, the most dangerous.
One of the most
dangerous, but still, we managed to survive. I mean,
somehow.
But there's a thing, I don't know, like, at what point, how long you had to live away from there, where you were like, you realized you weren't about it?
Yeah. At some point you realize, I mean, I remember once they throw a grenade on a festival.
But that was really heavy stuff.
I love that you're like, well, hey, it's not like we have grenades in every festival.
Exactly, yeah.
No, because it was a very weird,
and it was not
Independence Day celebration. And I remember being with some friends at the bar, and then a friend told me, I'm gonna get my girlfriend, and then like 10 minutes later he calls and he says, oh shit, I just crashed my car. Actually, it was not his car, it was a friend's car. He said, I just crashed, and we asked him, how bad is it? It's completely bad. Is everything destroyed? I just hit a wall. And so we went there, and there was the police and everything. And then the police said, all right, guys, we need to go. Something bad happened, so you figure out. So we were just left there. And then we just start seeing militaries and everything just passing through the streets, and we were like, what the fuck, what just happened? We had no internet back then or Twitter to see what just happened at that moment. And then our cell phone started to sound and say, come back home, something happened, some cartels throw a grenade in the middle of the celebration. So the city is big chaos. So we were like, oh fuck, that was like super shocking. And it stayed like with this fear, like in Berlin after the terrorist attack, like with this paranoia, for 3 months that you.
What terrorist attack?
In the Christmas market.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it was that feeling like, that was really bad. But in a normal day life, you know, things can happen, but you just live with it.
Yeah.
You know that you don't have to mess with certain kinds of cars, like big black trucks.
Right.
And so there's kind of things.
There's those things that are like ingrained, where you're like in the corner of your eye looking for that truck maybe, or just noticing it. And then 5-6 years of like living in a relative safety, then all of a sudden, I don't know, there was a time when like I felt something lift, where I was like, oh, right, I don't have to worry about certain things.
Yeah.
And it's like a fear, and there's like like getting shot. It's not like that. I didn't live in places. I've never really consciously thought someone's about. Well, no, I mean, like in specific situations, but like in general, like, but there's like the more just like, if I break my leg, I don't know what's going to happen next. Like those kind of low level anxieties that happen in places where like you don't feel like you have a safety net. I don't know. I always wonder, like, if it's, if you're going somewhere with grenades, do you feel that ever?
But for example, here I have also children, and Yeah, that feeling that I have here that still, it's Berlin. It's a big city, and you hear a lot of stuff in the news, but I'm not really scared for the safety of my children as long as they know when to stop to cross the street. I know they're going to be fine. But it's never like in Mexico or some other countries where I can think, oh, okay, I need to bring them with a car and always have an eye on them because I don't know what's going to happen. Here, I feel, completely safe. Yeah.
I'm trying to think of... There's places I don't want my kids like I know they're gonna step in feces and it might not be dog. Like there's like where do where do I like really like
Schönleinstraße?
There's not like streets or alleys where I'm like, oh no, we can't like get off at this station.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, there's somewhere I'm like, if we get off at this station, I'm gonna have a conversation like explaining certain things, and that's fine. That's just work. I can take it. But I'm never like, we don't go there.
Yeah.
There's nowhere. I mean, and maybe I'm naive or I'm lucky in that, but it's...
Or maybe when you're in this city, you get used to those kind of stuff and you know how to approach them, even to explain them to children, because I guess that even Germans that come from a very little village in the middle of Bavaria, they come here and they are like shocked. And everything for them is a big shock. And in a big city, it's stressing me. And I saw a homeless person and they like,
yeah. One of their first things is that they say is it's dirty.
Yeah.
So that's
my kid said that to someone was visiting. He's like, you're going to think it's dirty. It's just cool.
It's somehow it is. I mean, one of my first times here in Berlin also, it was very impressive that, especially in Kreuzberg or Neukölln, all the graffiti and all the houses, okay, poor landlords, their buildings are all full with graffiti, but that was cool. A relative of mine lives in the US and told me, whoa, everything is full of graffiti. Is it safe here? Is it not like gangs or something here? And like, no, or maybe, but it doesn't matter. Yeah. Nothing happens.
No, because here is art.
It's art. It's art.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, in the U.S., you see this level of graffiti, and you're like, oh, something's gone wrong.
Yeah.
And here, you're just like, no, we kind of just planned it. That was that's the vibe.
That's the vibe. Berlin.
Like you see like something without graffiti, and you're like, now something's gone wrong. Like wow, whoever gentrified that. Yeah. But like to build a place new, it doesn't have the graffiti, but anyone who can afford to keep covering it up, you're like, that's
exactly.
Yeah, that's like wow. I mean, and then there, I know at that flip, like I'll go do a tour, and I'm on a bus or a train if I'm lucky, and I'm going through some city in southern Germany or whatever, and there's no graffiti.
Yeah.
And then not only that, all the walls are white. And I'm like, it's like, what happened? Yeah. It's like some sort of reverse zombie apocalypse thing. Like you guys, where I'm from, we just call that a canvas. Like that's not a wall. What are you, just white? Really?
Yeah.
And then I'm like, then I'm uncomfortable. It's sort of like, if you drop me in the middle of the woods, I'm gonna be like, oh no, I'm in trouble. If you drop, but someone who's living in the woods, they're like, it's fine. And you drop them on a corner, and there's,
it's the kind of thing also that I have when I pass by or go to Switzerland. Everything is like so clean, so perfect that I feel like just my presence there is already making some sort of disorder.
Yeah. You're like, oh, I guess people just shave like every day, or what is the deal? Like
exactly.
Like, how does that? I remember I remember being in Stockholm for the first time.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I felt so short and so poor and so dirty and stupid. And I was just like, people were really nice to me. And I just was like, some little, golem kind of.
People's nice. They're giving me money.
Yeah.
I just have a coffee and then they put money on my cup.
Hey, that was my coffee.
They keep doing that.
Yeah.
Oh, it's 71.
If you live in Germany, you have worked less than 12 months, or if you have bought a new computer, or if you have to travel more than 30 minutes to your workplace, well, maybe it's worth filing your tax refund in Germany, because I think you might receive a very good tax return. I know that we think that it might be very complicated, or some people are even scared of the Finanzamt, but it doesn't have to be that complicated. Everything depends on the tools that you're using. For example, I use Wundertax. Wundertax is an application that I use to do my tax declaration. With Wundertax, you can complete your entire tax return online. What's more, you can calculate your potential refund, See what deductions you're eligible for and determine whether it's worth filing before you even start. For example, I did it last year and I got 500 euros back. And some people even say they got more than 1,000 euros. So if you go to gutentag.wundertax.de, Wundertax like Wonder Tax, but with a U, they even have the website in English, so it will be easier for you. And it will take you around 20 minutes or even less. Also, that's the best way also to support this podcast. Gutentag.wundertax.de. Thanks for our sponsor, Wundertax. And now let's continue with the conversation.
When I got into stand-up, I didn't start doing that until I moved to Berlin. And it wasn't like, I wasn't in the happiest place.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, that like second winter in Berlin, that feel. I always feel like that's the worst one. Like the first one, you're like, everyone tells you it's going to be bad, but then that sets you up to like, you kind of get through it because you're like, well, that wasn't as bad as I was expecting. Plus, you're still new in Berlin. You're like, this city is so fun. People are amazing. I saw the sunrise, and then the second winters, I find like that's the one that really hurts me. Like if I see someone who's really sad, I'm like, second winter, they're like,
and there's people that they arrive to Berlin on winter. And that's the worst.
You think that's worse?
Yeah. I mean, like you just arrived to Berlin.
Yeah.
You don't know anyone.
Right.
And then it's completely dark for months, cold.
Right.
But it can only get
it's
better.
horrible.
The problem is when you had it good because you came to Berlin with the hook that, wow, Berlin in summer. Then it's gone. And then you're like, oh, you experienced a good thing. And now you're in the valley of that.
Yeah.
The sadness.
Suffering.
Yes.
When you come in the winter, it can only get better.
Yeah.
But the thing survive.
That first 3 months, you're just trying to figure out your Anmeldung anyway. So you might as well just be inside, like refreshing the Ausländerbehörde website to try and get, it's summertime, then you're going to be like, oh no, I used up my visitor's visa.
Yeah, exactly.
But when I started doing stand-up here, part of what was really appealing to me about that art form was that the idea of the performance was just to have fun and laugh. And this is one of those things that's like, well, duh. Yeah. Right. But so many things I've done have had these, other ways to evaluate them. And just like that idea, like, oh, we're going to set aside this time, this hour, these 2 hours to just like, the goal is to have fun and be silly and laugh. And I was like, this is a mind-blowing philosophy. Yeah. And so I always like kind of want that when I'm, when I get on stage, I'm like, whatever amount of fun you guys are having, I want more now. And that's like, that's where I go at. And like other people, like that's for me. I'm not talking like, that's not what comedy has to be. That's not what stand-up has to be. There are people who like have good ideas or like, or brilliant writers and performers. And I don't like, that's not what I want. I want to just like joy.
Yeah.
Which, can be a struggle.
And you started like 10 years ago or 12?
Yeah, I think I started in the winter of 2012.
Okay.
So that's been about I can't do. Does that mean it's been 12? I don't know, whatever. Yeah, it's a little over a decade. Yeah. Some of that in terms of my experience was, pandemic years. So let's say 10 actual years.
True. So many years lost.
Yeah. But that was in terms of doing stand up, in terms of like appreciating it. Having it totally taken away, because it's so easy to be like, oh, I don't want to get up on stage, or this guy, why didn't he book me, or oh, that person's not funny, but they're headlining, or all these little things that can creep in and ruin what is like started for me as this expression of like surprise and joy, and I'll just never like take it for granted again. Like every time ever since like that first show back, like with an audience, I've taken so much pleasure in looking forward to it, into being on it, into afterwards, no matter how it went, appreciating that it happened. And so that was a great outcome of those years of.
Yeah. You will never imagine that suddenly you will be out of stage for such a long time, and that you don't know if it's ever going to come back, or if the bars that are hosting those events are going to survive, if the venues are going to be there once the pandemic is over.
Right.
So
the fact that like you it's so easy within a very short time to just be like, Yeah, there's just a place that these people own where they have a stage and microphone and a PA and chairs facing it, and they serve drinks, and they let me go up there and tell jokes. And like, it becomes an industry or becomes a vocation or becomes an obsession. But it's like, no, that's actually kind of amazing that they set that up. Like that could have just not been there. They didn't have to do that. They could have not opened a bar. They could have done something. They could have just invested in crypto. Like, it wasn't a great decision on their part. And they let you just do it, say whatever you want. Come on, that's amazing.
And that combination of having this experience in comedy was what made you also come up with the idea of the podcast. So when did you start having interest on doing podcasting?
Well, I got into podcasts in those when I really got into podcasts was in those early months in Berlin, early year, really? When I had no friends. And I'm living in this weird place, and we came here for my wife's work. So from day one, she's gone. She's busy, and she's got a world, and she's got social interactions. And I'm in this place being like, I didn't even have work permission.
Oh, really?
First, right? So I'm just there, and I'm listening to podcasts, and because I don't think I had really done it until then. I grew up with radio, like This American Life, and like a lot of things that sort of proto podcast, and then I think how I actually got into it is I started getting into comedy, and I got back into comedy through like the R-rated film boom of like the Judd Apatow movies and all of those like early 2000s films. What's it called? Edit Point. The Hangovers and that kind of stuff. So then you go on iTunes and you're like, oh, I want to listen to a Zach Galifianakis album, and you type that in, and there's one, Live with Purple Onion, one of my favorite albums. But then you also are like, oh, he's on all of these other things, right? Like just I would literally was like, I got into podcasts partially just from Googling comedians. I'm like, oh, there's these things where they talk. And then those early podcasts, there was a few of them, and Melissa would come home and she'd be like, oh, what were your friends up to today? I was like, oh my God, you'll never guess who said, and that was it. That was my social life, essentially. It was this one way thing. Yeah. So, and then listening to those podcasts was part of how I got then into doing stand-up. Okay. So it just all comes from a kernel of loneliness. Okay. Just hearing these voices. And so, the early podcasts that really got me into it there was something called Who Charted, a show called Doug Loves Movies. That was really big for me. And then there was a podcast that was actually recorded at a stand-up show at UCB called Put Your Hands Together. And it was amazing. And it was sets ranging from sort of lesser known comedians to pros and people coming in to do a few minutes or whatever. And they would just put it, that was and back then you couldn't go out and see comedy in English in Berlin. There was one show a month essentially. Yeah. Okay. And so that was my home club. I learned stand up from listening to them and got obsessed with it. And then when I finally got work permission, I'd be in the pizza shop that I was working at, prepping pizza, making sauce. Yeah. I would listen to 3 albums of stand up every day, just in there, chopping mushrooms, making sauce, rolling dough, prepping for the day, and just be okay, I got those 3 done, until I listened to everything essentially.
Do you remember how it was your first show
doing stand up?
Yes.
Oh yeah, definitely. Oh yeah, okay. I remember it very well.
How was it?
It was great.
Okay, so you have a good opening.
Oh yeah. My first set was awesome. And I think a lot of people's are. I think first sets, I'd say this to people a lot, and they always think I'm bullshitting, but I think your first time is kind of easy.
Okay.
Right? There's this magic happening there, and you've probably really gotten ready to do it, and people can tell something special, but just chemically, it's I don't know what the magic is. And especially if someone's, if the host brings you up and says it's your first time, I think that can people are like, wow, okay, well, that was actually pretty good, or their expectations then I don't know what happened, but I've seen so many people and I want to be very clear. I was not naturally gifted or talented. My second time was terrible. Oh yeah. It was brutal. I wish I had a tape of this. I remember just kind of I was I kept pulling clothes off.
You were sweating so much.
What's going on?
Why those lights are so bright?
Oh, they were too. They were. The first place, it was very evenly lit, Yeah. And I remember afterwards, it was this show called We Are Not Amused, which it was amazing. It was a foundation of comedy. One of the few shows that really like all of the English comedy and independent comedy scene kind of blossomed from that show and also the stuff that Neil was producing back then, and also the place where I started, which was called Buzz Club. And that was a mixed mic. It was like you would sometimes be following like a poet or
really?
Or a singer-songwriter, performance
just go there and say something.
And then the stand-up would go, and it was actually was great because it was like, you know, it was very freeing and supportive, and it was like, again, like this little corner on a Sunday night where like people helped each other out. It made them feel good. And like, oh, it's your first time. We'll make sure it goes well for you.
Nice.
Tim brought me up, Tim Whalen. I mean, I still like, it's amazing how many of these people, to some extent, I'm still know and I'm in contact with. And, but yeah, he brought me up and yeah, that first time it was great. The second time, brutal. Oh yeah, I was at Amused. And, you know, I'm not sure how things would have gone after that, but I remember leaving and I probably didn't look happy. Caroline Clifford, who is an incredibly funny comedian, anyone who wants to do stand-up, she teaches a course on it.
Okay.
And everyone who finishes her course that I've ever seen comes out like ready to get on stage.
Okay.
Right? They go and they do their class does a show, but then they'll go out and I'll see their first set in like a real setting and they're good. They have 5 minutes that works, and they have there's so many little fundamental things that, you know, you figure out or someone tells you eventually or whatever, but she's I think a really amazing teacher. But she's, you know, she wasn't always the easiest laugh. She'd be the DJ or whatever. But the point is I bombed hard and I'm leaving, and she kind of was like, hey, you know what? You'll be fine. Something like that. It wasn't like, hey, you're talented, stick with it. It wasn't like a compliment that was like it, but it was, it was incredibly empowering. Like that kept me going. Like she said I'd be fine. She said I'd be fine.
Yeah, like this
and it was so low key, and it was like, it didn't imply like you're not going to have to do work. She's like, you're going to be fine. You'll be okay. You can, you know, like
you can
don't quit.
Yeah,
you know, like,
yeah.
but also she wasn't like, she didn't need me to do it. She wasn't like, don't quit. You know, she's like, yeah, you don't have to quit. And so yeah, whatever she said to me was really important. Yeah. And like a moment I was like, probably more important than doing well in my first show. Yeah. Like,
yeah, because sometimes that happens. So when you are going down and you like, when you have difficult situations and then you stand on them, so you overpass them.
Yeah.
Then it's when you can develop something.
Absolutely. I mean, that's everything, I think.
But you learn everything by yourself, or you did a stand-up comedian course, or just by listening?
Yeah, I mean, I approached it like, I don't think I've ever studied anything as rigorously as I studied stand-up.
Okay.
I went through, and that didn't mean I didn't take classes. There wasn't any classes really available to me. Mainly what I did was listen to pretty much every single stand-up album I could get.
Okay.
You know, to stream.
And analyze it.
And then maybe listen to it again, or to break it down, or to try and learn it, or to focus on what was making things work or not work. And then I would get the chance to try those. And then, you know, simultaneously you have to learn about writing and performance. And I would take time where I would watch a video, like someone's special, muted, to kind of think about hand gestures or movements, or like to focus on how that works.
Yeah.
Or, you know, like I would see someone, I mean, and I would study my peers too. Like I remember the first time I saw Amelia Jane Hunter. It was very funny. And her diction, I was like, I want to hit consonants the way she hits consonants. Like, I feel like she's got jokes that are just because she's so good at I mean, there's more to it than that, but I was and then, and I would for like a month, I would focus on something like syllabic emphasis, right? So I'd be like, you see this video of me from like August 2011 or 2014, and I'm just like, and then I went to the kitchen and made myself an omelette, and it's just because I want to see like, what does that make omelette funny? Omelette?
Yeah.
Now I can't say it right. Omelette, and then all of a sudden that joke works because you mispronounced it slightly.
Yeah.
And so like, because you have so few tools, it's not like, you know, if you're a musician, you're like, I should add the flute. And now I've got this other thing. It's like, I've got a mic, maybe a stool, my face,
That's it.
You know, depending on like what they can see, maybe your body, you know. So like I did that. I just was like, okay, let me do all of these things. Let me learn how to work on volume this week. And so then it's sort of like there are jokes I can do, or I can be humorous because I've, you know, I was like, I learned how to be like, I know some secrets about comedy. Hey, everybody, you know, and then like that's all you've got.
We did a comedy classes. Yeah, because we wanted to learn because on the Podfest, and we will talk about that later.
Yeah.
I did. He was not there. I had to do the show by myself, and then I realized that knowing some elements of comedy would have helped a lot to doing a live podcast show. So a friend of us who does comedy here in Spanish in Berlin, he told me, guys, you need to join my class. And then we realized how a lot of those stuff can be learned because there's a structure, and there's like, okay. And then he was like telling by examples with other comedians, okay, that's how you call that form of structure. Okay, so I realized, okay, those are things that can be learned, and that actually, for example, can even work in the regular life, for example, at work or by giving a keynote about something. So I find it like quite interesting.
Yeah.
We also have to do this 5 minutes
open mic.
How'd it go?
Well, I haven't done it yet. So I have
he still has to do it. I don't know if I will do it.
In Spanish?
In Spanish.
Yeah.
Yes. Or Irish.
But in general, you need a lot of courage to go to the stage and to
try to make people laugh.
Make
right?
people
it's not
laugh.
the same as playing the guitar because.
Well, at least that's maybe how we see it.
No. I'm super jealous of musicians. It's like no matter what you did, you played the song and now it's over and they clap. Like you did the thing. Right? Like you can produce an artwork, like a painter. Once they finish the painting, they don't even have to show it to anyone. They're a painter. They made a painting.
Yeah.
You know, I'm gesturing. There's no paintings behind. There's paintings on the walls over here.
So there are
camera two. Can we cut to camera two? Thank you. But like, you know, if you didn't like the canvas is, so to speak, for the comedian is like someone else's like experience, you know.
It's like if you go out and in a gallery and the matter of success is measured by how many people stares at your picture and says, this means something.
It's good.
Yeah.
And if you don't get that reaction, then it's a failure. And if you get that reaction, then everything's good.
Yeah.
And then
So
you have to
it's
be
like-
careful to not be canceled if you make a bad joke.
A bad painting.
Yeah, you can get canceled, for both of those things. Yeah, it's funny though. I think maybe there are also though comedians who get on stage and they don't care necessarily how many people laugh. It's for them. They know it's funny. There's also probably painters who really care what the experience of the audience is. So now I'm taking back everything I said.
And you're right. It's the same.
Yeah, but there is that like, if the song has a beginning, middle, and an end, and then, you know, you did the job. But that being said, like I was at, you know, I've spent a lot of time at open mics where it was music and poetry and things like that. And man, it could be really brutal up there trying to get through a song. You'd think like, oh, I just play your song. But if you watching someone realize maybe the song isn't good, you know, like.
Well, actually, I have a music experience from my
He's a
teenage
musician.
time. But this one is really bad.
You were in a band or?
We got in high school. There was going to be like some sort of fair to promote your high school. So and then one teacher came and say, "Hey, who knows how to play guitars? Because we want to make a show because there's like a intermediate show what each school has."
Right.
So I told a friend, "Hey, let's go there. Let's present something." Another friend said, "Okay, let's do it." And then we said, I knew one of my friends. He knew how to play electric guitar. He knew the song of "Sweet Child of Mine" from Guns N' Roses. And we said, "Okay, let's practice it." We went there. We played it, but it was so bad. I mean, our performance was so bad that at some point we were like looking at each other and say, "Shall we just stop?
Quit? How do we stop?
How do we stop?"
Was someone singing too?
Yes, and it was horrible. And because we did that,
so Rose, that's tough.
and we did an acoustic version of it. I was playing the bass.
The bass.
Bass. The bass would be a fish, but
the bass, funny. And he was playing the
that's
guitar.
like a real nightmare.
And the other guy was singing, and it was so horrible. And then,
oh no,
I still get like this kind of panic when
You
I
were
try to remember.
traumatized by
And my
it.
friend, he always says he has the same feeling. He always say I try to forget that. So here it is, the story.
Oh man,
For all the words, so you can remember it again.
I wish there was a recording of this.
Well, I hope not.
Yeah, this is before everything. But I do. But the thing with that is you're saying, oh, it takes courage to get on stage, right?
Mm-hmm.
But were you courageous when it doesn't take courage to get on stage. It takes
Stupidity.
something else. Yeah, stupidity, lack of foresight.
And then and then the teacher told us, okay, tomorrow, because it was going to be many days. They say, okay, you don't have to do it tomorrow.
Right.
He knew how bad it was, and I said, give us another chance.
Oh no,
we will make it better. So I was really.
Oh,
So sometimes it's not courage. Sometimes it's stupidity. Yeah. You have to be naive and stupid to do stuff.
I mean, do it once.
It's like what
do it twice.
are you? Yeah, it's like you're someone who doesn't experience fear, but experiences regret. It's just like, where are you living? Are you living in the future or the past? I mean, there are people who are very zen and are in the now and are just like, yes, now I will terrible Guns N' Roses cover, but
yeah.
But
okay, we gotta
did they give you the chance?
Huh?
Did they give you the chance to do the
they
say no? It's they save you for a.
They were like, actually, sometimes as a teacher, it's my job to crush dreams. And,
Now later on a school festival in the same high school, then I performed again, but then I did it with rap, and then I realized that I was better at rapping than at playing the bass, and then I stick to that, and then I improved little by little, and then it went much better back then.
You got I didn't know.
I got some bars.
Yeah, should we make him now?
Yeah.
Because does he freestyle on the episodes ever?
No, not ever. But I have here, and he has 2 albums.
Yeah, but I used to go.
Sorry, you see, he Googled me. It's not fair.
No, but I used to go to the streets at night and downtown where the guys were gathering to make rap battles. So I went there a couple of times. So it was fun, but yeah.
Wow, I had no idea. It's just like there's some 8 Mile shit happening.
Yeah, everyone has a back story.
Yeah. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Street. I like rap battles like on the street.
On the street.
Yeah.
That's
for money.
Pretty. For money?
Yeah.
So wait, what?
Yeah, they were collecting money with a cap.
But like, would the winner get the?
Yeah.
Holy shit! Where was this?
My hometown, Morelia, Mexico,
Oh,
where
really?
you could drop grenades.
Dude, I want to see. This movie sounds so much better than 8 Mile, which is a pretty good movie. Like that's a good movie.
I got inspired by everyone got inspired by that.
Yeah. But like, I mean, come on, like street corner rap battles with like cash being pulled around. Like this. Oh, Lord, he's so shy. He goes up. Like I picture you. You still have that same hat. You're like you got a
hoodie.
Oh, wait, no, that's just it. We got to make it a little different. So we don't get sued, but I think it's at least a short film, if not a feature. We can do this.
Can be. Oh, you're a screenwriter and a filmmaker.
Yeah, I mean, there's some things on my website which are somewhat, ambitious. But yeah, I do screen. Like I got funding for a screenplay year before last, and we'll see how that goes. It'd be lovely. Like I've written a lot. I used to, and this was again maybe my early years of Berlin. Last year was important. I would write a feature every year, like just one per year. And you know what? That's dumb.
What's a feature?
Oh, like a film, like a full length film. I'd write a screenplay and then set on the shelf. And, there's nothing you can do with that.
Yeah.
It's another thing. It's like if you're a novelist, you're like, oh, well, here's my novel. You can read it. If you're a screenwriter, you're like, here's instructions for the thing I would like you to watch. Like that's, that'd be like a stand up being like, oh, here's the piece of paper I wrote my jokes on. You just figure out if you think they're funny. So that was one of the also really appealing things about stand up was like, it's ephemeral. It's in the moment. Like you did it, you made the thing, as opposed to the frustration of like writing screenplays, entering, sending them off to people who are like, no, it's not for us, or entering contests and losing and, trying to make it in an incredibly difficult medium. So
yeah. Also, it's hard to get that feedback for yourself or that if it was good or not, or that reaction on the people with something like that. With comedy, you can just go stand there. If it was bad, you get right away the reaction, and you can improve, and you go next time, and then you get the right response that you're looking for.
And you can do it yourself.
And also you have to read the audience.
Yeah.
So you can adapt in the moment. Right. You do the film. Exactly. It goes to a contest. You see what the other contestants are doing. You didn't win. You cannot react on the moment and change it right away.
Yeah. Stop them like, oh, wait. We're just going to, this is dragging. I see the scene is dragging. We'll just cut to the next scene. Yeah. I mean, and you need so many people to make them,
And time.
Yeah, and time.
Yeah. About the what you were saying, for example, on the going back to comedy. Also the thing that we notice in being here in a new city, and also you said that you were feeling like lonely at the beginning, and you got started on comedy, is that the community, right, that it creates. Because we now got connected also a little bit more to the Spanish comedian community, and I thought, wow, if I would have known this years ago, it's like really cool to have a bunch of people who are interested in the same stuff.
Yeah. And that's like, especially in the early days of doing stand-up here, where maybe people, they'd be crammed into these rooms to see, me, a guy in his second year doing stand-up, whatever, but I had gotten the spot that week, and they were so appreciative that they'd found this thing, that we were doing this thing, that the audiences were crazy hot.
Yeah.
And so the community was like, not necessarily like the people you're getting on stage with, but also all of those people who are like, just thank you. And you still get that sometimes. Like you play a little German town or something, and they're like, you're the biggest star to ever come here.
People need to laugh. There is a huge need here in Berlin for that, or at least in Germany. I think in other places there is more. But like in Berlin, at least, there is like, and with this weather, we need to laugh.
And then when did you start with Radio Spätkauf?
Yeah, I mean, that came out of doing stand-up. Like I met Joel, who was one of the people who originated it. We did a show together. He was doing some songs.
Yeah,
I was doing stand-up, and this is years later, I found out I had to close the show, or I don't know what happened, but for some reason he thought I was famous. And he
Googled you, so maybe.
He's smart. He's like never seen Home Alone.
He's on how's it called? This database of actors?
IMDb.
IMDb. He's there, so.
I'm Daniel Stern X on there. They add like Roman numerals, and I was like, I thought about changing it, like putting my middle name in, so I had my name, but I was like, ooh, X is kind of cool, like keep that. But yeah, and so I was also doing a talk show at the time. So this is the
talk show?
Yeah, talk show, like an American style, like.
Oh, okay.
Like,
you have a guest, and then
guest
you
comes on. I do a monologue at the beginning. Guest comes on. We play silly games. I would have a musical guest who would play a couple of songs. I had like little sketches and videos. It was an insane amount of work I would put out.
But live or
live?
Yeah, okay.
And I didn't record them.
And what?
I didn't record it.
Oh, no way!
Yeah. I just did it as a live show. This is like. To not have the presence of mind, like now, like no one would do that. And now it's like all these things. I was like, I would spend a month getting the show ready, and I wouldn't make any money off of it. Like a few donations, and I wouldn't record it. And it's like the people who saw it thought it was great. And Joel's brother would come, who I did the podcast with, and so they were doing this news in English podcast, and it was really important service back then too. You couldn't Google Translate so easily.
Okay.
There wasn't as many outlets covering Berlin specific news in English
even now.
And so we developed a community, and because it was local, we developed like a local community, and it meant a lot. Like people who listened from back then, and for me, I had no idea anything what was going on around me, and then all of a sudden, after a while of doing this, I was like, I knew the mayor's name, or I'd be like at a cocktail party where everyone's German, and they're like, how do you know about politics? And I was like, well, I listened to this podcast, because I never did any research. I would just show up and like have my opinions or learn things.
Yeah, that's what I have noticed, and I wanted to ask you if you read the news or they read them for you, and you You say your opinion on the fly.
Yeah, so it depends a little bit.
Yeah.
But for most of the years of doing it, I would contribute very little to the research or the writing, and mostly just and we even like I used to have more parts I would read out of like the news, like the actual like more scripted informational stuff. And eventually I was like, don't give me that stuff anymore. I'm not good at it, and then I can't. And I'm so like I'm thinking about it, and then I can't. I'm not thinking about what's funny about it, and so I started just doing kind of more like the announcements, and then I was like, just don't put me in the script anymore. I won't read it, and
sometimes that first reaction of listening to something is also the good thing, right? Yeah. How do you react the first time you hear it?
Exactly. Like unless you need to really like we used to do a show that we got hired by one of the local like public broadcasters to do a version of the show, but it had to be 3 minutes long. Or they didn't. I think they didn't really know what a podcast was.
A podcast of 3 minutes.
Yeah, it was like 3 to 5 minutes or something like that. It was like a radio. I don't honestly. It was the early years of like podcasting in Germany where they were still sort of figuring out what to do with it. But then we'd write it because it had to be really quick. I had to I couldn't sit there trying to figure out what I thought about a thing. It'd be like headline, and that was also really fun because it was so tight and like punchy and like a challenge, and like to get those things. But I'd have to do it on the way there because it's the fresh news, So they send me like I'd get like the headlines or whatever we're gonna write, and I'd be like on the U-Bahn like joke, trying to figure it out loud.
Wow!
So we go do that. We could do a couple of takes, we'd edit it, but that was also really fun. But yeah, like the more organic reactions are better in general. For me at least. I mean, there are people who are good at writing jokes. I'm just good at being like me. And it was funny though, but over the years, first of all, like as I became less ignorant, like sometimes my opinions got less funny because they were like that, something to contribute. But also like the rest of the team kept getting funnier.
Okay.
Right? Like when we started, they'd be serious, and I'd be like dumb. And then then eventually I was like, oh man, you guys are kind of actually really funnier than me. I don't have, but it was awesome. Like I wouldn't have to do that work, or I'd have to work harder,
Yeah.
Like, instead of just doing the easy over the plate, like cynical, sarcastic joke about German culture, I'd be like, well, I have to think now and have better opinions and I appreciated that. And so a lot of times also when we're looking at the episodes, my contribution might be like selecting the articles, right? Or like, I might know more about what's going on. I love trying to find great guests. That's one of my favorite things about creating the episodes. But like, yeah, I'll say, oh, this article looks good, but I don't think I should be the one to write it up because I'm not going to double check another source. I'll do a thing in German where like I understand all the nouns and verbs, but I'll get the meaning like 100% wrong, like, oh no, that guy murdered. Oh, okay. Though he was the victim. Okay. Wow. That's actually really sad. We shouldn't do that story. Like I thought it was funny, but
what a plot twist.
Yeah. That's always, I'm like, oh, okay. Like I generally have to like take what I think the political stance is of the newspaper to make sure like if they seem happy, that's a good thing. If it's one paper, if another one, I'm like, I don't think I misread this one.
Or if you're reading it from Bild, then you have to be more cautious if it's a real news or is it just like some sort of fake or something.
But especially early on, I couldn't read any of the smart papers.
Yeah,
right. I like the first newspaper I could really read was like the BZ, and I still love that paper. And I know it's not like the crown jewel of German journalism or whatever, but like. One of the best things that happened out of doing Podfest for the last 3 years is I got to be in the BZ. I had like they did a little write up. My picture was in there in a little corner, and I was like, I've made it, Mom. I remember when I moved to this country, I could barely read this newspaper, and now look at me. I'm on page 7.
Yeah, I saw that a lot of newspapers wrote about Radio Spätkauf, and that's quite impressive and a lot of recognition for the work that you have done. So it has like how long then the podcast, like 8-10 years or
12 years? I wasn't on it for the first year or two. So I'm not good with dates. That was like I used to be in the restaurant business, and I'd be like the sommelier, and I'd be like, they'd be like, is that a good vintage? I'm like, it's a good wine. I tasted it. It's great. Like, don't ask me. I can't remember. 85. Oh, was that the Rhone? Blah, blah, blah. I was like, I'm never going to make it as a wine guy. But yeah, so with the podcast is like 12 years old. I think I've been doing it for 10.
Okay.
Wow.
Like
Okay.
That's quite.
Wow.
Yeah, it's wild. It's like it was like like they had started a podcast like before I kind of had heard the word.
Yeah, and also, I mean, back then, podcasting was not so mainstream as today. Like today, everyone has a podcast, and I like that you use that in the slogan of the Podfest, like the past year, right? Everyone has a podcast.
Yeah, and I mean that in a good way. Like I think it's a very good thing. Like I love that there's like no gatekeeping, that like no one feels like, well, I couldn't, well, not me, you know.
The entry barrier is quite easy, and it's good. I mean, even Eminem's daughter has a podcast, so
I mean, it's like, again, it's one of those things you can take for granted, you know, until it's like taken away, like that you have a place to say what you want to say and see if people want to hear it or not. And like
exactly. That's how actually we started. We just say, okay,
let's just record. Let's see if our friends listen to it, and then it started to grow and grow and grow. I mean, we mean the Spanish podcast. This one is just starting, but
I think that's great. Like, and I really like try and push that. And so much of like the podcast industry or like the blogs about, you know, when podcasters are talking about, they're like growth or had this thing or the numbers or money or whatever. And I'm like fundamentally, it's like record a thing and make it however you want to make it. And that can, and I that isn't to say like I love a well-made, well-scripted, beautiful sounds and like people who take the time to really care about making a great podcast, or people who have the natural ability to do it with just, you know, their equipment lying around their house anyway. But like I mean, it's one of the things with Podfest Berlin is like I don't try and get the best podcasts. I don't try and get the worst if people want to be a part of it, they're a part of it. Like, it's like, are you a real podcaster? It's not like, you know, like, well, what's your resume? How many listens do you have? I'm like, like, did you make a podcast? Yeah, well, it's been a few months. No, you're fine. You're a podcaster. You did it. Like, that's the cool thing, because it actually makes it also easier to connect with the community of podcasters, because everyone is having the same struggles as you, of trying to get an audience, of trying to find a concept, or even some people want to have some advices. Which tools are you using? Which mics and everything. So it really connects a lot and creates that feeling of community, which is something that I really like. I met awesome people in thanks,
in
man.
Place.
That's what it's for. I mean, I really and I think that goes back to like the early days of doing stand up here, where it's sort of like, you know, the people, there's a lot of big industry podcast gatherings.
Yeah.
And the people who go to them don't need anything from them and don't need anything from each other. And they're fighting over things, or they're fighting over, you know, the people, they're trying to fight over the advertisers or the listeners, or they're, you know, whatever technology they're pushing to try and get bought by Spotify or whatever, these things, which are all great. And I depend upon these companies. Like, and I love that they also exist. But like, one of the things that happened, like that warm, friendly thing you talked about in the stand-up community, one of the reasons that happened in Berlin was there was nothing to fight over, right? There was never going to be money. There was never going to be a future. There was never going to be a TV deal. There was never going to be, you know, like you could maybe make it to the point where you could pay some people to pay some of their bills. But like the fact, it was really easy to support each other and be supportive when there wasn't like anything to compete over. And I feel like that is something that can happen with, you know, grassroots, you know, running clubs, you know, like where like it's like we're not trying to be we're not trying to win the marathon, but we're like, how this is the gel I use so my nipples don't bleed, and like, you know, like that's kind of that mentality that I think subconsciously wanted to create.
Yeah. I have one other question. In your bio, it says retired competitive eater.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah. So, now I've never like been a professional competitive eater.
Okay.
But I used to enter like, those contests, if you
Hot
finish
dogs
these
or-
things, in the restaurants, this is a very American thing, but it's like, if you can eat this whole thing in under a certain amount of time, it's free kind of thing.
Oh, like
Okay,
in
wow.
Homer Simpson when he tries to, what it was like this.
That was
big
the
steak.
chili eating one though, right? Or no, he had a steak. Okay.
Yeah, the steak. Yeah.
But yeah, so I've done like I used to do those things.
Wow, okay,
There was
cool.
one. The only one I was really good at. There was a place in Portland called Voodoo Donuts, and they had the Texas challenge. The Texas donut was just a very, very big donut.
Uh-huh.
You had to eat it in under 80 seconds, I think, or a minute. I can't remember. I think it was 80 seconds, and I could do it. And like it was like a pretty fun. Like that was something it was another thing. The donut would be free, and they would give you a free pin. And it like how you see like all these donuts with like all the weird crap on it. They were kind of like the progenitors
Okay.
of that. Like you would go in there and they would have like the breakfast cereal or crazy combinations of things on them. Like the first time you ever saw bacon on a donut was there. Originally they got in trouble. They had to stop selling. They had one with Pepto-Bismol on it.
Oh my God.
Well, it was like you would go in there. They were open 24 hours. You might be drunk, you might be hungover. Like it made sense. And it was like, but then the FDA was like, you can't put medicine on donuts. But yeah, so that's why it's in the bio, and it's also because I think like I have that vibe. Like the bios, I feel like a lot of times they say, oh, they've performed here, they've done this, they came from here. It's like, what's the vibe? And I'm like, my vibe is like retired competitive. And then people are like, yeah, I get that. That.
They know what to
Yeah.
expect or how to profile that. Yeah. Okay. But I see that you have a very multifaceted or a very broad spectrum of stuff that you have done.
Yeah.
Also, you have a project or Oat Milk Daddy.
Oat Milk Daddy is like it's like my design side, right? So I don't know where that phrase came from. I think like my kid was just like asking, like, could I have like Oat Milk Daddy, and I was like, ooh, that's good. I was like, I should use that. So I've used it as a title for a show. And then that's always weird because it's like not really, I'm not vegan or anything. I just like the way it sounds.
So from what I hear, like Berlin made you what you are now.
Yeah.
For example.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, wherever you are is going to kind of make you right? I think, but
How different was
Berlin was a place that felt like, especially when I moved here, was going to give you the permission to be whoever you want if you wanted to go do that. You didn't have to. It was like cities where it's like figure your, you move to like a hustle city, like, you're in New York and they're like, figure out who you are and figure out how to do it and do it now.
Yeah.
And do it all day. And like Berlin was like, hey, if you want to go be yourself, you can. And like that took a while to sink in. I'd been like working in the restaurant industry and really, deeply ingrained in that and this following, getting to fine dining and molecular gastronomy and all this like fucking why? I mean, I appreciate all that stuff. It's just I can't watch The Bear. It gives me like PTSD. I've never seen an episode. I saw the trailer and I'm like, no.
It was quite good.
I know watched it. It's amazing, but I can't.
You get stressed. You get stressed already by watching it.
It took me a decade of not working in the restaurant industry to be able to like sit in a restaurant, just like sit there and not be like, I heard the bell, like run the dish. It's getting cold. It's getting cold. Table. I used to know, like I could walk in and be like, I know that the table numbers just by like, I would be like sitting there, I'd be like, hey, I think table 10 needs, how do you know it's table 10? I'm like, well, obviously you're going to start at one there and go. Anyway, it was bad. Like I would sit with my back to the whole restaurant because I was just like freak out.
These Vietnam memories.
Yeah.
Feeling.
Yes. I mean, yeah, sort of. It wasn't that. I don't want to take away from the sacrifice of our veterans, but also like, restaurant work in America. Here, it's not so bad. You're like, they're like, I'm a waiter. What's that mean? I bring them food, like if I feel like it. Yeah. Like, do you have to be nice to them? No. So I might have lasted longer. I was just like walking around. I was just mad. And I was like kicking stuff in the trash, like someone in a cartoon who's mad, just like kicking stuff on the street. And I kicked this thing and it wasn't a leaf, right? And I went down and I wanted to see what it was. It was like a little leather bear, like an ornament someone had made or something. And there was something about this thing where it was like some symbol of Berlin. Like it was handmade and, kind of nice, but also like trash, like it was just some like leather. It was wet, it was broken, but it was kind of beautiful. And I was like, okay. And I wasn't like processing this as a metaphor, but it was also I remember in this moment, it's raining and I'm like, oh, I can kind of like like someone was just like, I want to make little leather bears. And then they did it, and I can do what I want. And I was like, I think I'll be a talk show host. And then I just did that, because you could. And I felt like where I had been living before, even though like Portland, Oregon was a very permissive, fun city where they're like, yeah, if you wanted to go do a pentathlon in the park, just do the paperwork and you'll be fine. And like, or don't. Like, it was definitely like a city of weirdos. But I was there not being weird. I was like, taking my job seriously and thinking about work and not thinking really that I could be an artist. I thought, well, no, that's for only artists can be artists. I'm not an artist, therefore I can't be one. And then all of a sudden I was like, well, Mr. Bears. Mr. Bear says, do whatever you want.
I can imagine it already. How would it look on a screenplay?
Yeah. It's there's like, oh yeah, the rain. Beating it's like, yeah. Right. But then this is like about a guy who like thinks his bear is talking to him.
But that's what a lot of people say about the city.
Yeah.
Also for me was very interesting what people are doing here for a living in the rest of Germany. It's like either you go to work at Mercedes or Daimler, BMW, Audi, Bosch, and so on. And that's the standard of life that everyone should do. And here it's that difference that breaks the norms. What are you? A musician, a comedian, a lot of broad stuff of options. And I remember one of my first internships that I did here I was doing it for a guy who had a blog who would put stats of video games, but from Facebook and all of these social networks. He will put them on my blog, and that was his project, and he was apparently making some money out of it.
Yeah.
And I was, and then I came back to Mexico after this internship and say, you know what people do in Berlin? They just have a blog and they're living out of it. So I was quite inspired and amazed of that. You can just do what you believe in or what you think it's interesting or fun. Yeah.
Or people would, what do you do? And they would tell you, and then you'd be like, doesn't sound like a job. Oh, no, it's not my job, right? Like this idea that like your identity wasn't your work and like you can separate those things.
Yeah.
And like, I bartend, but also I do comedy on the side.
Yeah.
And I think that was the other thing that like that thing that you could split those things apart. And I think younger people know that better. I feel like people who are like entering industries today are like, yeah, this is what I do for money. Like, it's not who I am.
And that's why the older generations, they complain about the Gen Zs because they don't take their work so serious.
Yeah, because they feel stupid they know that they're right. I was like, oh yeah, I did waste my life on this company. Crap, I should have. Yeah, but I love that everyone complains about whatever generation. It's like, oh, these kids today. It's like, no, old people suck every time. They make up the word for it. No, they're hippies. Yeah, it's I mean, I don't think Berlin still means that to a lot of people. I think that's fading. I think it's still a place where people can come now to when they want to do something. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's still like a place you can show up with like no reason to be there and then take it from there. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's maybe missing. I feel like it's still easy to like come here without, a resume and build what you want here.
Yeah.
I think, we're in a decade, you won't be able to do that anymore. That's the way these things go.
Mm.
I mean, that's what I saw in other, like Portland's like that now. Portland's just tech money or whatever. I see people, the streets are numbered there. How many miles out someone lives from like the river.
Okay.
And, it used to be like, people, I just got a new place at like 158th Street or, 212th. And I'm like, I don't think the numbers go that high, guys. We never went over 100. Like, what are you talking about? And it's just, that's people get pushed out, and that's
same thing here. Right? Before you can, that's what made the city full of artists and musicians and everything, because it was so cheap to come here, rent a very cheap studio or a co-working space, and you can live up with $500 or $600 a month and follow your dream. Now,
but not just that. So you have also all these people that they want to gather and then they want to come to and make something.
Yes.
Because there's cheap places all over the world.
Yeah.
But you can find a place where you can find artists and musicians and all these things.
Or someone to see it, someone to appreciate it. I mean, every city is full of artists. You know, it's just like in some cities they're successful artists, and like in Berlin they don't have to be, or at least they
exactly, they don't have to be. They just be artists.
That's awesome. It's like
everyone can be a DJ, but they don't have to play specifically on the Berghain. But everyone is a DJ, so yeah.
I mean, I didn't consider myself a DJ till I played Berghain, but that's a story for me.
Wow!
Never played Berghain.
You got a show in a very few minutes.
I know, right? Yeah, I feel like I should plug this show. That like I'm like, hey, when's this episode drop? Does it drop 30 minutes ago? Because maybe people can go see it.
Before the time is up and you go to your show, maybe you want to share how people can find your next shows and where they can find Radio Spätkauf.
Yeah, Radio Spätkauf. I mean, there's this friend wherever you get your podcast. I kind of like. I want to stop someone from getting I want to just take like some podcast platform that no one uses and like ban it from using just so I can say, get it wherever you want, except for these one. Like if you die, I'm not, but I don't know who to alienate.
Or a exclusive deal with Amazon Music or something like that.
I should just pretend I have.
Exactly.
Like, we're exclusively on, and then,
exactly.
So Radio Spätkauf, and it's with the AE, not with the umlaut. And if you can already spell that, maybe you're ready to listen to German podcasts.
Yeah.
And we've got show. We also do live shows in Berlin, and that's really I love having an audience, so we do a lot of those shows live. How to Fuck Up an Airport was like our big hit, and it's still like if you want to see everything that went wrong with the building of the airport, go back and listen to those episodes. It's amazing.
Okay.
And I can really be proud of it because I did very little of the work. So like the team, we put together an amazing podcast there. SternDaniel.com is my website. I update it very infrequently. My socials are like at Daniel and Stern. I think you can actually Google Daniel Stern comedy, and I will be on not probably the first page, but you'll get me. Podfest Berlin is where I do most of my podcasting projects. It's an annual festival, but we also are doing things all year round. And actually, I just started working on something new, and I don't know when this will come out. But I partner with House of Color, and I actually, I don't even know we don't have enough information, but I've got this amazing project coming up that you'll be able to find more about soon. That's all about kind of like getting together in the real world, which is something that I care deeply about, it turns out.
Thanks a lot, Daniel Stern, for being on the third episode of the Guten podcast in English. So,
awesome. Thank you so much, guys.
Yeah. Thank you a lot. See you next time. Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen.